The UN Secretary-General has raised the alarm over a major shortfall in the organisation's budget. Antonio Guterres has sent a letter to member states urging them to pay up.
We're running out of cash sooner and staying in the red longer, caused primarily by the delayed contributions of member states to the regular budget. This new cash shortfall isn't like those we have experienced previously.
And I can speak now to Stefan Dujarric, who's spokesperson for the UN Secretary-General. Very good evening, Stefan. Thanks for coming on to speak to us. This shortfall we're talking about, how serious is it for the organisation?
Well, it's serious and it's of concern to the Secretary-General. This is not new. Every year we go through periods where we're running low on cash, and that's really due to the fact that different countries pay at different times due to their budgetary cycles. This year, however, we are running out. We're running low on cash earlier than sooner, and we're staying in the red longer. So the Secretary-General wrote to member states asking those who haven't paid to pay their dues in full. We have about 112 countries that have done so, but obviously we're waiting for the other 81. We would like for them to pay their budget dues in full.
You said it's a normal state of affairs for them to be delayed in making the payment. Is it unusual, though, for the Secretary-General to have to contact them and remind them?
I think it's been done before. The Secretary-General took the step of writing to staff members as well to make sure everybody understood what the situation was. As I said, this is an increasingly worrying trend. You know, we don't work like a government. We don't have the ability to control our income flow and expenditures as well as governments. So the member states set a budget, but then we have to wait for them to actually pay the cash for us to actually go through and implement and pay for the expenses of that budget.
Do you have any idea why things are taking longer this time round?
Look, you know, that's a question you'd have to ask the member states. They don't usually give us explanations. Obviously, public finances throughout the world, we understand sometimes can be tough. We're publicly financed. We are an intergovernmental organization, but this is a trend that may impact our ability to deliver on some of the mandates of the Secretariat. So that's why that's why the Secretary-General sort of raised this flag at this point.
Sure. I mean, if the money isn't there, you can't spend it. I'm sure everyone can understand that. Is there any particular area of your program that could be vulnerable?
No, we're looking right now at how to limit expenses that we can control, whether it's travel or regular budget expenditures. So I don't want to create any alarm. Obviously, you know, the way the UN is financed is somewhat complex. Our humanitarian work is financed separately from our regular budget, and for that we have to appeal also yearly on a regular basis. So the work we do in Syria and Yemen, that's financed from another pot, which itself is also underfunded. So what we're talking about is really the day-to-day work of the Secretariat.
Do you fully expect all the countries who haven't paid yet to pay up in full? Is there any kind of record of that not happening?
Well, you know, every year there are a few countries that are unable to pay because of a state of war, civil war, and that's something that we expect. That's really usually a very limited, it has very limited impact because we're not talking about a lot of money. We do expect all of the member states to pay up in full and hopefully on time. But, you know, we have no, there are no sticks here on the part of the Secretary-General. It's really a plea for member states to live up to their obligations.
And if I understand this correctly, Washington is the biggest contributor to the budget. What do you make of Donald Trump's decision to cut the amount of funding?
No, the U.S. has not cut the amount of funding to the regular budget of the UN. The U.S. The U.S. portion is set through the scale of assessment, which is agreed on by every country. So the U.S. has cut back, and some other countries have, on certain programs. But we're talking here about the Secretariat's budget. The U.S. has not cut its budget. The U.S. traditionally pays later in the year, and that's been the case for a bit over a decade because of the fiscal the way the fiscal year works in Washington.
Is that something that you will be discussing with the U.S. The scale that they pay on the amount?
You know, this is not a U.S. problem. This is an issue that really impacts. This is about the 193 member states, and the fact that we need them to pay up sooner, if possible, and on time.
And anybody watching will understand you need that money. How can you, though? You have no punitive measures, do I understand this correctly? So it really is just an appeal to them to speed up the process. Right. There's nothing you can do about it.
No, there's no punitive measure. I mean, the only punitive measures, so to speak, are the ones that the member states themselves can impose, not the Secretary General. And if a country doesn't pay its dues for, I think 3 years, they can lose their voting rights in the General Assembly. But that's a separate issue. The Secretary General himself has no punitive measures to invoke. It's really an appeal, a kind appeal, but a very loud appeal.
Stefan, appreciate you taking the time and for clarifying the situation for us. My guest, Stefan Dujarric, who's the spokesperson for the UN Secretary General. Thank you.